If you have to advise people as to who want to be investment bankers, what will be the first step they should be taking in their lives?
Be ready to work a lot, to become workaholic.
Right.
For sure, what I'm going to see for the future is a huge merger wave in the tech industry. We have seen what happened a few months ago with Elon Musk that acquired, I would say, with a really expensive price, Twitter. Nobody knows exactly what he's going to do. But what is happening in India, apart from the big giants that already do, like ArcelorMittal, that already organize M&A deals everywhere in the world. But now it's still, and again, time to make domestic M&A transaction. And if you want to grow, you have to acquire. It's the easiest way, the quickest way.
Alright, so here we are with another interesting video. Today we have a very interesting guest with me who deals with M&As. What are M&As? We're talking about mergers and acquisitions. Some fascinating stories in the business world are told about the mergers and acquisition, and today we are going to unearth the realities of a lot of these mergers and acquisition because we have an expert in this field. We have Professor Leonardo Etro. Glad that I'm having you here for this conversation. To begin our conversation today, there was one report of HBR that I was reading while I was doing the research for this interview, which said that M&As are actually mugs game. More than 70 to 90% of the M&As that happen in the world, they're mostly failures. So what is the hullabaloo about? Like, why do people give so much importance to mergers and acquisition if they're such a failure?
Your first question, it's quite important because let me say, I know these articles say that most of M&A deals destroy value.
Yeah.
This is a topic that it is always discussed. And let me say also, if you look at the academic or scientific literature, there are papers that say that M&A create value. Other scientific paper that say that M&A destroy value. So it is difficult to say we always create value or not. For sure, it's not so easy to create value for stakeholders, not only for their shareholders. And basically because there could be, I can say, three main problems. First of all, the mispricing. Most of the time, when you want to do an acquisition, you want to close as soon as possible, and sometimes you also misprice the value, so you overvaluate the company, and most of the time, because second concern that there is about M&A, you overvalue the synergies that you can create with a company that you decide to acquire.
Yeah.
You think that by acquiring another company, you have one revenues, the other company has one in terms of revenues, and you can create 2.5 in terms of revenues. After that, you integrate the two entities. And the third problem is, of course, the managerial culture that there is behind a company. Acquirer and seller, they have maybe a different culture. I'm not talking only about nationality, but I think also the culture that there is behind the entrepreneur, the CEO, the founder, the people that has worked with him in the past 20 years, they maybe think and they act in a completely different way. So integrate these two different families could create and generate problems.
Right. Leonardo, you have a background in M&As. You specialize in that. You have been teaching for a long time as well. Do you see a shift right now that is taking place from the time you have started studying about it and the kind of times that are now when the mergers and acquisition deals are happening worldwide?
Yes, I think that the world has changed a lot. Let's think when I used to study, and I mean 25 years ago, we weren't living in a global world. Now we are in a completely global world, And in order to compete in this kind of world, in this kind of different scenario, you need to scale up as soon as possible. And M&A is the quickest, the fastest way to scale up, to globalize, to internationalize your business. And that's why acquiring M&A competencies is becoming more and more important for all the companies coming from different countries in the world.
And the M&As happen because of the investment banks that are available in the world or in the country that are operating. And some of the investment banking jobs that students get into are the most lucrative jobs that they look after as well, right? So if you have to advise people as to who want to be investment bankers, what will be the first step they should be taking in their lives?
Be ready to work a lot, to become workaholic.
Right.
Second, I will say, work is an activity that stresses you a lot. So you must be quite confident on what you want to do in your future, because preparing, doing and closing an M&A deal is something that really stresses you all the time. You don't know if you manage to close, it maybe take a long time, you have some deal breakers, really long negotiation. So it can hurt you, it can be a problem. So an opportunity to grow, to make growth also the companies that you are working for, and you can be happy because you did something that created value for the companies you are supporting and you are advising. Then at the beginning, what you need to do, of course, you need to be quite able and quite good in the main software, Excel software, PowerPoint presentation, because at the beginning of the career, what you do is to support vice president, associate, director, executive director in preparing the pitch, in preparing a presentation, in searching for the best target company. Then I think after that you achieve these competencies, that it could be quite fast. It will be very important to negotiate in the right way. So being a good commercial guy or girl, being a good person with a good soft skills in terms of negotiation will help you in managing this career, the M&A career in investment banking.
A lot of times what happens is the multinational or the bigger companies, they go for a take mode, as we call it. In the take mode, they essentially want to get into newer businesses, newer sectors that probably they don't have an expertise in, but because it's valuable, they try and get their hands into it. What sort of examples come to your mind when we talk about these kind of mergers and acquisitions that have happened in the past, and what are the pitfalls of the take mode in your opinion?
The main problem are that if you don't have a special and strong expertise in what you want to do, it is very difficult to take advantage in front of other competitors. The competitive arena is quite important, and so if we think about Microsoft when decided to acquire Nokia and they want to start the production of the hardware, probably it was a completely different business. This could be difficult.
It was a software which was trying to get into the hardware business.
Or maybe also other company. I have many other examples, like I remember at the beginning of 2000, I'm so sorry that I'm a bit old, and also my example are about 20 years ago, but I remember another company like Daimler, Mercedes, that acquired Chrysler, that was quite strong in the US continent. And basically they wanted to do the acquisition in order to increase their market share as a Daimler in a different continent. They acquired the company for $50 billion. I think, if I don't mind, in 4 years, they divest from Chrysler and they sold it for a final price of $5 billion, with a net loss of $45 billion, just because they didn't manage to create synergies with Chrysler. Then that was acquired by Cerberus, one of the biggest private equity funds in the world. Also, the private equity Cerberus didn't manage to create value, and basically Chrysler defaulted and then was acquired for zero, let me say, by Fiat And just 10 years later, they managed to create the real value, to generate value, and Fiat Chrysler became one of the first group of the world. So we go always back to the same problem, the overvaluation of synergies, or maybe also the desire of the management to do an acquisition because they have to do, because they are evaluated in the internationalization process. Also because they maybe have bonus, stock option, if they manage to grow the asset of the company that they have, the market share, and they're ready to buy, to pay any price in order to achieve this result. But at the end, the value created is not so solid and strong because you don't manage the competencies in order to manage the entity acquired.
India is at a center stage, and the economy is also fast growing. The world is talking about it, and according to reports, India is going to topple Germany and Japan as well in the rankings in terms of becoming the economic superpowers of the country, right? In this kind of a setup, how important does it become for me as a student to acquire these kind of skills and knowledge and information and apply them to sort of grow myself and in terms work for the nation?
Of course, I think also that India 3 years ago was behind Italy in terms of GDP.
Yeah.
And now you pass it also us. So
yes.
If now in 3 years you manage to pass Germany and Japan, you'll be the third. Of course, M&A skills are important because now I think that India will be mostly concentrated in this phase, let me say, in domestic M&A activity. India is huge, has a huge market. There are a lot of companies, like in Italy, because there are many small and medium enterprises. But what is happening in India, apart from the big giants that already do, like ArcelorMittal, that already organize M&A deals everywhere in the world. But now it's still, and again, time to make domestic M&A transaction. And if you want to grow, you have to acquire. It's the easiest way, the quickest way. Then I think in 5-7 years, it will be the moment that Indian companies that created a correct dimension, they will be ready to go abroad and to start an acquisition campaign. This is something that happened in the history for all the countries. Also Italy before 2000, let me say 2002, 2003, it was mainly focused on domestic activity. Our banking system were mainly focused on created big giants in the Italian market. From 2005 to 2006, we started an acquisition campaign outside Italy in order to create big groups at the European level. And this is something that happened. Let's consider that Italy overall, in terms of population, is just like Mumbai plus Delhi.
Yeah.
So you have much more to do than us in terms of domestic activity. So M&A skills are important because for the next 30 years probably M&A will be the main value driver of your companies, not only at domestic level but also at the international level.
Let me ask you something. If I'm interested in learning more about M&As, in more about valuation, and more about finance per se, what should be my first step? The one thing that I can do probably is go online and search a little bit about these key terms, and I'll be flooded with a lot of videos that I might find, or the articles or the books that I might find. But if I'm a beginner, what should be the first step that I should take in terms of learning?
The first step, you have to follow my courses in M&A here in Mumbai in the Bocconi Data Center. The first thing, you have to follow courses. I will say interactive courses when you can meet the professor, you can meet the colleagues face to face, is the best way also to create networking, to understand how to network with other people. That is one of the fundamental characteristics that you need to have in M&A. Then another suggestion, come on, you have in-house the best professor of finance, that also for me is let me say a mentor, that is Professor Aswath Damodaran. Is an Indian professor teaching at the Stern Business School, the Business School of New York. Is considered the #1 in the world as a professor in finance, and he has a blog on finance, specialized in finance, valuation, and M&A. And so this could be another way to approach the topic. There are many videos about this professor about topics like M&A, value creation, governance, valuation. It could be a good beginning for new students in love with the topic.
Right. So, Leonardo, tell me, you have been part of this entire space for good 2 decades, over 2 decades probably. What do you see M&As to be in the future? How do you see that progressing from here, where we are sitting right now, and the kind of changing global trends or the economies that we are seeing, in the world happening?
Yes, I think that it's always nice to try to understand in advance what is going to happen, also thanks to M&A. For sure, what I'm going to see for the future is a huge merger wave in the tech industry. We have seen what happened a few months ago with Elon Musk that acquired, I would say, with a really expensive price, Twitter. Nobody knows exactly what he's going to do. For sure, everybody knows that he is a genius. So he has probably something in mind that we cannot understand now, that we will see in few months. When the value was going down probably to a $8 billion or something like that, it seems to be very crazy. But it's not the only acquisition that I see for the future, because let's think about Meta. In its past, I remember in 2012, 2013, Meta was a main actor of the acquisition. They acquired for $1 billion Instagram, and it was considered, let me say, not stupid, but crazy. Then for $19 billion WhatsApp, there were 2 perfect acquisitions. Now, Facebook is losing clients, customers. If I talk to my students here in the Bocconi Asia Center or in Bocconi, Milan, nobody uses Facebook. Instagram is used, okay? Then there are other new social media, but they have to do M&A. So I'm waiting and expecting a big transaction made by Zuckerberg, because they have to. Otherwise, Instagram is the only value driver that they have at the moment. Second industry where I see something that is going to happen, utilities. For the scenario that is changing in the world, what is happening in the war, Russia with Ukraine, Europe is basically now more linked to the African continent. I will see Europe that will be closer to countries like Egypt, Algeria, Libya, that they're going to provide energy, gas to the continent. And probably there will be something is going to move in these industries, from the oil, the gas, green economy, because the world is changing also on that point of view. Then, or less I will say, all the business that were really affected by COVID. And these business are the business with a huge amount of fixed cost. Company airlines, commercial centers or real estate, supermarket. These are businesses that were completely affected by the COVID, that didn't give them the possibility to generate revenues. If you know, for a business that is based on fixed cost, if you don't generate revenues, you don't reach the break-even point, and it is a disaster because of the lockdown. And the disaster created in 2020, 2021 in India, in Italy, in China, in Brazil, in US, it cannot be, let me say, recovered in 2 years. So this company will need to be merged. In Europe we have 3 main low-cost companies, like Indigo, for instance, or Vistara. The leader is Ryanair, then Wizz Air, the third EasyJet. Wizz Air launched an offer to EasyJet, so the third one on the second one, to create a group that can compete with the first one. Company airlines suffered really a lot in the last 2 years. So these industries will be affected by a huge merger wave. And it is not so nice to say, but this is the only way they can cut costs, they can reduce the fixed cost, and they can sooner reach the break-even point, and then they can make profit.
Just people who are interested in investment banking or mergers and acquisition are not affected by it, but a lot of people who are going to get into the jobs for these particular sectors and fields that you just mentioned are also part of it, right? Like the managers that you're preparing here, they probably are going to take up responsibilities in these sectors that are coming up. So it's important for them to also understand where the world is moving, the way you mentioned or mapped the kind of sectors that are important, and to make sure that they are ready for that kind of a world or the changes that are happening. What sort of new interventions are you doing or planning to do in the near future so that they are ready to take up challenges?
The new skills that are required are, of course, business transformation, understanding from the past how the business can change in a very quick way. Let's think about companies like BlackBerry. What happened to BlackBerry in 2 years? Because of Apple created the iPhone, in 2 years they defaulted, they closed. So to understand how the business can be transformed in a very quick moment. So the idea to understand the change in the business in the quickest way in order to react in a really fast way. Second, I will think it will be important to understand different culture, because you are maybe now the CEO of an Italian company, or let me say, because I'm in India, of an Indian company, and tomorrow you can become the CEO of the same company that acquired an Indonesian one, or a Vietnamese one, with a completely different culture. And so maybe knowing different languages, different mentalities could help you for the future world and for the future activity that you are going to do. And then of course always being commercial and a guy or girl with good negotiation skills is something that is always, let me say, the base of a good manager in order to manage in a good way a competitive company.
People who are at the intersection of whether to go for an MBA or not, whether to do a program for 2 years, invest their time and money, and then get into the world out there and look for jobs, what would be your advice to them?
Training program, executive education, master education, it is always a good investment, because it's the only way you can better compete with your peers, with other people. This is the best way in order to meet and to realize network with other people in class. And so I think it is always the best investment that you can do in order to raise the bar, in order to be ready to take new responsibilities, in order to prepare yourself for new different roles. Then of course, if you ask me a suggestion, I would say it is important also to look at the business school where you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I have to say, but Bocconi as a group is one of the leading business schools in the world. According to the last ranking, that we are number 6 in the world for the MBA ranking and number 3 in Europe for the MBA ranking. And so ranking matter, because the value of the diploma, the certificate that you have, will depend also a lot on the ranking that is attributed to you to an important newspaper like the Financial Times.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much, Leonardo, for your time here. I know for a fact it has been a long day for you. It has been a long day for us as well on this campus, talking to a lot of students. But thank you very much for your, knowledgeful session, insightful session that you have provided for about M&As. If you want to know more about M&As, about the kind of program that this particular institute offers or what Leonardo teaches, there's a link in the description. Go check that out. Do tell us in the comments below if you liked this particular episode, and if you have any questions, do share it with friends as well. And do tell us which are the other kind of topics or the videos that you want us to go and make in different campuses, and we might come up with them soon. Thank you very much once again, Leonardo. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I hope that I meet you soon again to have more conversations around this.